So you've decided to get into photography, and right off the bat, you are faced with one of the toughest decisions you will make as a photographer, and that is, what camera should I buy?
We are Jeremy and Kathleen Burns. We are the owners and creators of UseThatCamera.com, and when it comes to picking out your camera, there is a lot to consider. Not only do you have to think about the brand, Sony, Nikon, Canon, Fuji, Olympus, and then once you decide what brand you want to go with, what type of camera? Do I want DSLR? Do I want mirrorless? Well, then once I choose that, do I want a crop frame sensor? Do I want a full frame? There's a lot to consider when you're choosing your first camera.
And we are going to explain all of that to you so you know what to look for. When we started our photography career more than 10 years ago, we did some research when we were trying to purchase our first camera, but honestly, we weren't sure what to look for. We didn't have anyone explaining what those things were, or even saying, hey, here are a few good options, and we're going to do that for you.
Yeah, I did a lot of YouTube watching and had a lot of different people tell me a lot of different things, and I actually made a mistake on our first camera. I did go with a crop frame camera. It worked for a little bit, but once we got a full frame sensor camera, we saw the difference. It was like night and day, so kind of wasted my money a little bit. So that's what we want to speak to you about, is how can you not waste money if you're really serious about getting into the lifestyle of being a professional photographer?
So the first thing you want to look for is the brand, and ask any professional photographer out there, and no matter what they use, they will tell you that the top 3 brands are Canon, Nikon, and Sony. And we do recommend going with one of those just because they are used so much in the world of photography that when you are looking for education or
just guidance, or asking
guidance,
a fellow photographer for help.
There's just a lot out there on those cameras, and you won't be left in the dark wondering how to use it.
Now, me personally, I've used all 3 in my career. Kathleen has been strictly Nikon.
I'm not a creature of change.
But me, earlier in my other career, I did use Canon at work, and I was happy using it, but I just really had a hard time using it. And then once we became, professional photographers, we started using Nikon, and I really loved the simplicity of Nikon. The buttons just make sense. Where they're located makes sense. What you spin to change, different settings makes sense. The way they label shutter speed S, aperture A, makes sense.
It's kind of idiot proof.
Yeah, I really love Nikon. I've used Sony. I wanted to switch to Sony for a little bit to try out their mirrorless system, and though I liked it, I didn't find it as easy to navigate and use, and it definitely wasn't as comfortable in my hands as my Nikon was. Nikons are just molded perfectly just to fit in your hand. No matter which Nikon you buy, you'll be happy with the way it feels in your hands. So I went back to Nikon from Sony, which made her happy because
I wasn't ready to make that kind of change. And we will tell you that whatever camera you use first, there's probably a 95% chance that that is the brand you're going to stick with, because once you start purchasing lenses for these cameras, which can be very pricey, you're not going to want to change all of that. So of course, as Nikon users, we do recommend Nikon. However, we know a lot of photographers who use Canon, and I will tell you, one of the best things about Canon is the coloring. The colors are bright, vibrant, not much editing required. It's just beautiful. And with Sony, actually probably the most popular out of the 3 over the past 5 years or so, because they really led the charge in mirrorless cameras, and their mirrorless system that they've created is top notch, and a lot of people just really love using Sony.
Yeah. Now, that being said about mirrorless, first, what brand do we choose? We choose Nikon. Doesn't mean you need to.
Right.
But let's talk about the difference in, now that I figured out what brand I want, DSLR or mirrorless. Now, DSLR is just the old style of camera. It's what's been around for many, many, many years. And there's moving parts. So when you take a picture, you look in the eyepiece, you're seeing a mirror reflection. You hit the button, there's pieces that open, light comes in, hits a mirror, hits your SD card, hits your sensor. It just does all this moving parts stuff.
There's a lot to it.
Yeah, and that's the way cameras have always worked until mirrorless. Now, mirrorless gets rid of all those moving parts, and it's almost like you're letting a computer run inside your camera instead of the moving mirror, and hence the name mirrorless. There's no mirror.
Yeah, and the camera's going to be lighter too because it just gets rid of that mirror system, which can be pretty heavy.
But the cool thing about it is, since it's almost like a computer, when you change a setting, whether you're changing your shutter speed, your f-stop, your ISO, you see what the image is going to look like on the screen before you even snap a button. So you can really fine tune in your settings to get the look you're going for without having to take a test shot, look at it, change something, take a test shot, look at it, change something. That's how DSLR worked. But mirrorless, it's great. You change it on the fly. And even the eyepiece. The eyepiece is amazing because it's a mini computer monitor. It's no longer just you looking through a mirror and seeing everything that the camera sees out the lens. It's a little miniature monitor that just really helps in just making fine-tune adjustments and taking really pretty pictures.
So unless you are already seriously looking at a DSLR, maybe because you are able to get a good price on it, we recommend going ahead and going the mirrorless route. It's the future of photography, and that's just the route I would go beginning in photography.
It's really where all brands are heading. Everybody's heading towards mirrorless, and it's great. It works great. I love it. I would never go back.
Yeah.
And I don't look at my old DSLR pictures like, oh, those are so much better. No, everything looks great, but I just really prefer mirrorless and how the camera works.
And the final aspect to look at when purchasing your first camera, once you get past brand and mirrorless versus DSLR, is whether you want to get full frame or crop frame. And
this is the sensor size, the
yes.
little part inside your camera that's capturing all the light and all the information and making a pretty picture. That's your sensor, crop sensor or a full frame sensor. When we first started photography, our first camera was crop frame. Didn't really know what that meant at the time, but I knew I was saving money, so that's what I chose. But once we bought a full frame sensor, it was night and day. Our images looked so much better, so much more colorful, so much more crisper, more in focus. It's just crazy how much better our images look just by going to a full frame sensor.
And kind of also what that means is, with a full frame, if you put a 50mm lens on your camera, you are going to get a 50mm image. It's not going to crop in on that and make it seem smaller. So after all of that, you are probably still wondering, well, what camera should I buy? We do have some recommendations for you. We have created a guide with a list of those recommendations. All you have to do is comment "guide" under the video, and we will be happy to send that to you.
Now, if you've enjoyed this content and you want to see more future content like this, make sure you click the subscribe button at the bottom of this video as well.
Yeah, this is our very first video for our new YouTube channel, and we want to be able to deliver nice, awesome, free content to you weekly, and so be sure to catch all of our future videos.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Bye.